So foundations for power, one of the biggest ones would be alignment. So this is the alignment of the mental body, the astral body, the physical body, how we think, feel, and act. As these become more and more aligned, we find that power increases. So this is why as you begin to progress along the path, the quality as well as the quality and content of your thoughts becomes important. The quality and content of your feelings towards yourself and the environment becomes important. And of course, the quality and content of your physical action. So these become very, very important. Now, with the alignment of these, power increases because you get a cumulative stacking effect or a synergistic wave effect. As opposed to a dissonance effect where the power of the waves cancels each other out and flattens out or goes into a deficit. Right? It's very difficult to make progress and to really align when you're out of alignment, obviously. So alignment is important. Now, alignment isn't good just because it's alignment. You can be aligned to very negative things that are damaging and destructive to yourself and to everyone else in your environment. So we want the alignment to be two, hopefully, qualitatively good aspects of mind, emotion, and body. Now, this gets into a whole expose on good and evil and what is good, what is bad. This we need to transcend from any mental, astral, and physical layer. And it's not really worth contemplating until you are in the Akashic state and the non-dual or clear light states. Then what is good, what is bad becomes a much more playful interaction. What's interesting is that there are densities, we could say, or personalities of expression, of energies from the emotional and mental standpoint that make it much easier to enter those Akashic and clear non-dual light phases and states. Parameters of reality, and of course beyond the parameters, because we're getting into non-dual, so parameters have to disappear. In Akasha, the parameters have to start disappearing. However, to get there, there are definitely things that aid that. And so this gets into the astral development, the training of the black and white mirror of the soul. And in many systems, you have the cultivation of how you engage with the environment right from the beginning. So a system I often draw from for this is the Vajrayana Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, because they look at this and have looked at it in a lot of detail for hundreds and hundreds of years, and people who have been exploring this with 100% of their time and their attention have documented it for hundreds and hundreds of years. So they have in this framework, the Tonglen practice, and forgive my pronunciation, I don't know how to pronounce anything. So you have this practice that is a bodhicitta type of practice, or a cultivation of they would call it like mental training, stages of the mental practice. And this is all about absorbing the negative, the pains of everyone around you onto yourself, and essentially metabolizing those or alchemizing those pains into whatever your highest might be. So this gets into an interesting dichotomy, because you go, okay, well, can I have compassion for and a tenderness of heart for what is towards what's around me and myself, at all the different layers, and not take on the damage? And then we get into the alchemy of, or we could say even the subtle interactions that are taking place if we do allow ourselves the opportunity to take on that damage. So at the outset, we might think, okay, it's much, much worse to take on damage. Why would I do that? Why would I take the suffering of the environment onto myself when I could have a nice wall up and a nice shield up? Well, if you want to look into the qualitative cultivation, or we could say the cultivation of higher quality states of mind, emotion, and body, that's very difficult if you are separating yourself from the environment and protecting yourself from it. How are you supposed to come to these higher aspects of compassion, of tenderness, these higher vibrations, more refined aspects of consciousness and light in your practice, if you are separating yourself from the world? So, as we explore this, we start to find that there's merit in not simply wishing well at very, very deep layers to what's around you, but incredible merit in not just being open to taking on the sufferings of the environment around you, but in the beginnings, there's it's not really good, but there's almost a pride in taking on the sufferings of the world around you. And this is going to be an issue in any system, any practice you engage in, is the pride aspect, right? And this is what you find bakes itself into the alignment of the cults that arise around traditional systems, of the cults that arise around any system where you get this alignment based off faith, whether it is a guru yoga that one is practicing, whether it is, a Manson family one's engaged with, or any cult. One of the benefits of that is the alignment. Unfortunately, what you are aligned to is very, very important, and that's what we're discussing here. The qualitative alignments that are taking place, the alignments that are taking place to particular frequencies, bandwidths, and qualities of mind, of emotion, of body, and of course of the spirit. So, once we have looked at this, we can see the benefits of some of these traditional practices. Because if we are wishing well to the environment, but we see ourselves as separate, and then we start to take on the negative sufferings of the environment and feel that in the body, it can be quite disease-inducing. You will have negative reactions to that, and not just physically, but your fight against that mentally and emotionally will start to arise. And if that fight is there, then you will be very, very hard pressed to sustain that goodwill for the beings that whose suffering you're taking on. And as you start to grow on this path, and as you start to find and resolve into greater and greater Akashic resonance, the timeless, spaceless, and non-dual resonance, then it's very important that you're not entering into that union, right? That unity, and also harboring a bunch of negative thought and feeling for what you are entering into union with, because that's also yourself. So you end up damaging all ends of the just all of it. It all takes on damage. So, moving back into the cult thing, 100% of the students I have ever spoken with or interacted with who are of a traditional path, who are engaged with a self-proclaimed enlightened teacher, is that positives are, of course, the alignment is there, the faith is there, but there is also a handing over of the sovereignty of the spirit to the teacher, and of course there's a pride in the teacher. And this becomes an issue because the deficits of the teacher almost always become the deficits of the student. And all people who are developing express through the acquired astral karma of this life, we might say, the cause and effect that you've gone through. So as this acquired self has grown across the life, when one breaks through into the non-dual states and these Akashic states and starts expressing, we might say, like spiritual wisdom, this is always expressed through that acquired personality and that acquired self. So someone who's been a scholar their whole life starts to express this through scholarly speech and disposition and writings. Someone who had a different upbringing and a different path of engraving, we might say, over the course of their life will express through those means. Maybe it's martial arts, maybe it's music, maybe it's engineering, whatever the pathways of development have been physically, mentally, and emotionally, how that's all been engaged with, those will be the expressions of that acquired self or the personality of display. Now, that doesn't mean that the spiritual person is bound by those, but very often the expression is through those mechanisms. So when you are working on the spiritual path and you're working through these or meeting these teachers and systems, etc., we have to look at the merit in why you might give yourself over to a teacher, in the guru yoga sense. Now, this is, of course, at a higher level. The guru is an expression of infinity, not an expression of themselves. And this takes a type of faith that the teacher actually is what they say. Now, unfortunately, there can be a lot of self-induced mitigation of growth on the path when you do give yourself over in this way, because you aren't connected in any conscious way. You could say, if you're not connected in any real way to that infinite aspect of yourself, then all you have to go on is what you're being told to do by the teacher. And the ramifications for and ease with which abuse can take place is off the charts, because you get gaslit into doing anything. And it's so easy. It's so easy to gaslight people on the spiritual path, because all you have to do is go, oh, well, the reason that you don't want to do this activity or this, that, the other thing is because of the trauma within you, because of the density within you, because of the separative aspect of your consciousness. You don't recognize the wisdom of all that is, blah blah blah, and it's so easy. Now, it's so funny, because there is a necessity to giving up yourself. How can you can't grow spiritually if you're not giving up yourself, because you are the thing that is interfering with the throughplay of that highest refinement of consciousness. So when you look at the mechanisms at use in traditional settings, not that all of them are necessarily a culprit of this, or in cults, is the slow chopping away of you. And you need this to rip apart. We need to rip apart who and what we are so that we can align with something higher. And the problem comes when that which is higher is being imposed on us instead of something that we are tuning into. So over the course of the training, it is the prerogative of any good teacher to tune the students to that guiding light of refinement of consciousness. This tuning can only be done through entry into stillness and silence from as many different perspectives as possible, so that you have a connection to the stillness and silence from as many aspects or delineations of the vibrational scale as possible. Why is this important? Because that means that you have, kind of like, instead of an elevator stopping on each floor, you have an elevator that you could get off of at any moment. Um, don't think too hard about the dynamics of how that might work, because I can't think of it right now. But from a spiritual standpoint, that's what you're looking for, because this gives you a freedom at every layer, which means every aspect of the scale that you're working through, you might say like a sliding scale instead of a step scale. As you're progressing, you're able to find equanimity, stillness, and from there touch into truth through the light of the Spirit. We need to be able to tap the light of the Spirit so that we can give ourselves over to this guiding light more and more and more. And this will help us find the way to the next phase of what we might need to be exploring from a practice standpoint and working through. So you find that cults can provide a scaffolding, almost like a rehabilitative scaffolding to help us realign. However, if the progression on the path is an allegiance, we might say, to within as an of liberation, freedom, then what we are aligning to matters. And if we are aligning to something that is in contrast to that freedom in ourselves, in our outlook, in our disposition, in how we engage with the environment, then we have something we need to look at. And again, while there might be positive value at certain points, there can also be very detrimental effects of aligning ourselves under the purview of another human. Because from a spiritual standpoint, you're working with universal law, not with human ideas, not with mental concept of any kind, not with emotional pull of any kind. It's far beyond that. So we need to touch that, and we can't touch that if we are working under the parameters of all these blockages that are being imposed. So there's always value in everything. It all is stage dependent. And so one of the things that spiritual cultures tend to look at in terms of the people that are, say, the head of those groups, is how do you cultivate an environment which is conducive to the liberative efforts of the spiritual path. And that works wonderfully because the environment is what we bounce ourselves off of for very long periods of time. We're looking for cues from the environment in terms of what we're doing. Is this right, wrong, etc. On and on it goes. However, we need to cultivate the silence relationship with many different doorways to silence, equanimity, so that we can tap into and generate the Akasha, and from there invite many, many, many different substrates of guiding light through as we progress on the path. Of course, one of the errors is that as soon as you experience something, it's so easy to attach to what we experience and then pedestalize that experience. And of course, that will be bastardizing the information that could be coming through because we are attaching to it from our lowest. So there's a big difference between a fun, free exploration on the spiritual path and an excited and like zealot or zealotic approach, a super excited and like apostolic, like fundamentalist type of approach, or a doctrinized, dogmatic approach. That's very dense. There's a lot of contraction in that and imposition on others, and this attachment to the way, to what is right, to the way to do it. And that is one of the underlying pins that you see in almost every single culture that arises around a spiritual practice, is the "this is the way" fallacy, which can, for some people, of course, have a lot of merit, but for many is simply destructive. So, sort of to recap, we want to look at the alignment, right, of the physical, the vital body centers fields, the astral body center fields, the mental body centers fields, what we're aligning to, the evolution of what we're aligning to, up the vibrational scale, the acquisition and cultivation of silence and equanimity, which will help us ascertain some connection to the akasha. Then we can start developing that emptiness in akasha, and this will give us a bridge to a guiding light. And this, from this guiding light, this truth space, this can start to guide further refinement of what you are aligning to. The you disappears. There is simply an aligned or a coherent field substrate with the highest resonance that you're capable of being. Whatever is in contrast with that will be your work on the path, which means every time you refine to something a little bit higher, a higher vibration, different qualitative refinements of consciousness, etc., that will be further work. So anyway, a little bit of a rant here on all this stuff we talked about. If you're interested in training, please check out the website. There are online trainings and courses, as well as workshops and retreats, so you can check that out. All right, thanks for your time. There's an alchemy retreat coming up this June, so you can check the details there as well. All right, practice. Bye.